Welcome, everyone out there in the fruited plains. Well, all over the world. Sweden, we are
I
all over
know.
the world on
We have
Todd's
a
World.
following in Sweden.
Carrie's with me today, like she almost always is. She's not going to be
Almost.
next week,
Yep.
but that's because she's going to be on vacation. But she's going to do a quick little
Yes.
call in for us on news to give us an update, like a poolside update.
A poolside Tampa update. I'll be on location.
There you go. She's going to tell us about like the weather,
Yeah, it'll be
her
good.
bikini.
And oh shoot, are you doing video? I'm not, I'm just gonna be
Uh-oh.
audio, right? Speaking of video though, today, like don't put this up on a big screen because all I have on is lipstick. I'm like
Uh-oh.
no makeup, so
Could have worn your Maxine Waters Halloween mask. Just talking it. You'd probably make more sense through the rubber mask than she ever does.
that's true.
Oh shit, we wandered into politics.
Oops.
Sorry
You
guys, it's
usually
beers with
do.
Jesus. I didn't introduce it yet, so it doesn't count.
Okay,
Now we're beers with Jesus.
there we go. We're on track.
Now we're rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's and God that which is God's. Right?
That's right. What is that from again?
Well, that was what Jesus said
Yeah.
when they asked him if it was lawful to pay taxes to Caesar.
Right. That's
He
right.
said, well, the old King James was render, but
Mm-hmm.
like the new translation would be like, give to Caesar what's
Mm-hmm.
Caesar's. Well, no, he has somebody hand him a coin.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, whose face is on this coin?
On the coin, right.
And they say, see, because the Pharisees were trying to trip him up. Was that in Mark even? That maybe, I don't remember.
I don't know if that was
The
in
worst
Mark.
Beers with Jesus host ever. I can't even remember.
I can't remember, but you know why? It's because because you move around and you reference other things. And I
But he
can't
gave
remember.
him a coin.
I
But
think it
Jesus
is in
said,
Mark.
I
I
think
think it
so
is in
too.
Mark
I think we talked about it.
because you when we got to it, you said this is the one you were talking about the one thing, the one time Jesus talks about money or
Yeah, he
something
doesn't
like
talk about
that.
money much.
Yeah. Anyway,
Taxes. He didn't talk about government much.
right.
For as much interest as we all have in it, Jesus wasn't interested at all. At
I know.
least from what we see in the Bible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I assume that the
hmm
Bible's telling us what we need to know mostly.
I'm sure he was pretty
Maybe we'll get to
aware.
heaven and Jesus will be like with a Trump MAGA shirt. I don't know.
Okay, no, we've already introduced the show.
I don't think so
Ah,
though. I don't think Jesus cared much about politics.
no, I don't think so either.
I but he did say that. He said give to Caesar what's Caesar's
Hmm.
and give to God what's God's. So money is Caesar's. It has Caesar's,
Yep.
emblem on it. It's provided by governments. It makes perfect sense. But I think that makes sense even when you take it and you widen it out beyond finances. Like I think
Hmm.
in your time, like I tend to think that way. Like give to God what's God's and give to like you're gonna have to work a
Oh,
certain amount. You're gonna have to do a certain amount of things,
hmm.
but it's good to reserve the time, some time for God, to give to God what's
Yes.
God's. You know what I mean? Or in our
Hmm.
efforts, or in our talents, or in whatever that might be. But
Right.
I think that principle holds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of feel that way with like the online church. So this is just one example of how I would apply that. Um, like this morning for like crappy sleep lately, and this morning I was like, if I wake up in time, I'll go to church. This morning I didn't, so I'm like, I'll watch it online.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll catch myself like multitasking.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
putting away laundry
It is
while I'm
hard.
listening to church, and then it's kind of like, and today when I was watching, I was like, just kind of like that, like give to God what's God. It's like
I
be present. If you're going to do this instead of go in person, then actually give it the attention it deserves rather than.
yeah,
And I
I
don't know if
used to
that's
try to do that.
an example,
I
but
think it is.
it's kind of how interpret what you just said.
I used to I don't go to I don't do the online church thing much anymore,
Hmm.
but when I do or when I have, I
Hmm.
would try to make myself somewhat of a captive audience. And
Yes.
so like I try to sit down in the living
Yes.
room and watch it, and like
Hmm.
I have my Bible with me and I try to like put my phone away and not be on my phone, and like I try
Right.
to actually kind of be like I'm there. I don't know if it
Exactly.
matters. It's just what I
I
try to do.
think it
You know
makes
what
a
I mean?
difference. It makes a difference. Yeah.
So
So,
anyway, that was for free. People
what's
got
that?
that totally for free.
I know, right?
Gosh, there's so much value in a show like this.
We have great lessons on humility here.
It's amazing. We're wildly talented. Who can pull this off?
It's so funny.
Okay, so next week, Carrie's going to be gone.
Yes, sorry.
I'm going to
I'll
do
miss you.
both a shorter news and a shorter beers on my own, but Carrie's
Oh,
going to do a quick call into news.
I will.
So that'll be your Carrie fix for the week. But then she'll be back
Yes, I will.
and we'll be rolling. So listen, guys, we appreciate everything that everybody's been doing.
I
Our audience has
know.
been growing, and
Thank you
I
so
hope that
much.
you guys will think of a couple more people and share a link or put it on social media. You can get it on
Hmm.
any of our, we're on all the socials at Todd's World or Todd's World 2023. On Facebook, you can
Hmm.
find me at Todd Allen, maybe Insta too. I do have Todd's World accounts at both. I just, I'm real bad about using them.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if you're Todd's Allen or Todd's World on Instagram.
And
Anyway,
and I
you
got a
can
new
find
book out. I
us.
talked about it a lot on news. You should listen to news if you haven't. It's so good.
Oh
You
my
should listen
gosh.
to both of these. I don't know
We
why you wouldn't.
went we went a little crazy on news.
It was fun.
It was fun.
But I also have a new book out, 9 Mile Point. It's on Amazon. It's a
Yep.
novel. And you should give it a shot. I'm telling you what, I love the story. I think it's so much fun. It's kind of a mystery, supernatural kind of paranormal ghost story.
That's
It's
cool.
fun. A little bit of
Might bring,
romance in
you
there.
know what, Todd? Maybe I'll bring it with me to read by the pool.
You should.
We usually bring a book and don't get very far, but
That's what
just
I
in
would expect you
case.
to do. You
Just
get
in
like four
case.
chapters in.
It will make the trip with me though. How about that?
That's good. Then you can show it to your friends
Yeah.
or your little Hillsdale girls.
Yeah. The pie fives.
That's exciting.
My
So
girls.
anyway, guys, go to
Yeah.
Amazon under Todd Allen and
Hmm.
buy. I don't know.
Yes.
I think if I were you guys, I'd probably be safe and buy a couple copies of each book. But it's up to you how you want to do it because you're probably going to want to
Yeah.
give them to people.
One for you and then gift one.
Yeah, why not?
Do it.
They're cheap enough. And then the merch is at toddsworld.net, and there's some great merch on there. I've got the Outlaw
Fun.
President T-shirt on right now, which I
Oh,
think
that's such a good one.
is just now it says 2024 because it was kind of a campaign type thing, but I feel like it
Right.
still holds.
It
It's kind of
does.
fun.
Is that the one that you wore in Florida and people were commenting on it? They liked it?
Yeah, they liked
Yeah.
it. But what was
Doesn't
funny
surprise me.
about it is, and I got this more than just in Florida. I get this at different places where you
Yeah.
look at it. So it's got
Yep.
Trump and it's got the outlaw president, and people don't know if it's. They're like, is
Like,
that's a good thing? That's a
yeah.
pro.
Is that like in support of,
It's kind of funny
or
because
is
like
it like a
I have people who
protester?
don't know right away, and I'll
Got
notice
it.
it because I'll like there's in Florida we were walking by, they have all the open air eating down there,
Yeah.
and I would notice people like do like double takes and like look for a second like they didn't know.
Love it. That's so
It's kind
great.
of fun. So
That's cool.
anyway, fun. But we got a great new beers with Jesus. There's a hoodie right now. I'll put a T-shirt out too for you, Carrie. And we got a wildly
That's
opinionated
cool.
news
Yeah, I want the wildly
T-shirt out
opinionated news
too.
art. I like the old
You've got
I
the old
like
school beers with Jesus.
I have two of the beers with Jesus and I really like that design. I'm gonna stick with that.
I
But
love those too, except you know what I feel like? Man, I
what?
don't know if this is good or
Do you
not
feel
good.
sexist wearing that shirt?
It feels a little chickish to me. That particular
Really?
design, when I see it, Nikki has one, all these
Ah,
people, and I think like if I wore one, I'd feel, I don't know. So I designed a
okay.
different beers with Jesus that
Even though
felt a
there's a
little more
sexy
masculine.
Fräulein on it, you
It's
feel like
I think it's ridiculous that I think that. I don't think there's any reason to think that, but for some
okay.
reason I
But I
think
get it.
that.
Okay. That's
I
cool.
don't know why. I love it. Like I loved it on you had it on your little t-shirt hoodie thing
Yeah.
today when we started the Beers
Yeah,
with
we
Jesus
started.
one.
It was just too hot. I had to take it off.
I love the logo. It's my favorite thing. But when it went to get one, every time I went to order one, I was like, so I
Something
designed a
held you
different
back.
one for
Well, I
myself.
like the one you have now is like two beers coming together. So,
Yeah. Well, no, it's just
right?
one beer.
Oh, is it one? Sorry, I was picturing two.
It's like a beer in the middle of like a square,
Yeah,
and then it's kind of a cool font that says Beers with Jesus and it says Todd's World
it's
underneath.
nice.
It's cool. You guys should get one. You're gonna want one.
It's very masculine.
There you go. All
That's kind
right.
of why I don't want one. I feel like it's a little guyish.
Do you?
I'm just teasing you.
It might be.
I'm just teasing you. But no, it's great. So yeah, share the show, go buy a t-shirt.
And thank you so much for joining us, especially it's our listeners. Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, you're the ones who are already listening and already enjoying the ride through this whole thing with us that
So
we just,
fun.
I mean, we couldn't do any of it without you. And I appreciate you all. And I
No.
love it when I hear from people and when I talk to them and they, they got whatever to say about it. It's great. Love
As
it.
more people are listening, like we're getting more feedback, and it's just, it feels really great.
I love it. It's
I
great.
know. It's fun.
So,
Yay.
anyway,
Look
thanks,
at us.
guys. We're going to get into it today.
All right.
We're in Mark 14. Where are we starting? At a bunch
Mark
of thieves. We use the
14.
message
Yep.
just because it's the best. And
Todd thinks it's the best.
my daughter, Lauren Allen, the singer-songwriter, she just bought a Bible yesterday, the day before, and I was like, "What'd you buy?" She was like an ESV, and I was like, "Well, it's not as good as the
Oh,
message, but anything you." So the best Bible is one that you'll read. So whatever,
yeah, that's true. That's
whatever
very true.
translation you want to use, as long as you actually read it, that's what matters. I don't really think it matters what the translation is, although I prefer the message. So
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the message for this endeavor of ours because I
yeah,
think because we're delving into the story and it's really presented more like a story.
it's very more. It's a lot more narrative. It feels more narrative when you're reading it. I feel like.
Hmm. I
Okay,
feel
so
like,
we are.
oh, I was going to say, I feel like we're at a bunch of thugs.
We are at a bunch of thugs, which is verse 43 of Mark 14.
Okay.
And we're going to just go to the end of the chapter today. We're just going to get it
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Last week was heavy, and I think it was good, but I thought, man, we can't spend that much time on all these short things. We're going to be
Yeah,
in this
true.
forever. So, but I did think it was good. I felt like it reminded me of that
Hmm.
part of Lord of the Rings with Gandalf, where they're standing on the walls of Gondor, waiting for the Mordor armies to show themselves, and he's like, "It's
Okay.
the deep breath before the storm." And I kind of feel like that Garden of
Oh,
Gethsemane thing is
when
that,
he's crouched down with
yeah,
is it
Samwise.
Pippin? No, I think it's like
Oh, you're right. It's Pippin and Mary. I forgot. Or
yeah.
and it might only be Pippin because Mary
It's
might be injured.
right. Yeah, I remember that. That's cool. It's a nice analogy.
But I just feel like it's Jesus' final kind of right before everything. He's
Mm-hmm.
rested, and I mean, from there on out, we're gonna see what it's all about. So, do you want to
Right.
read it, or you want me to? Since you've been, it's up to you.
I'll read if you want. You read last week.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Is that too much for me? Like,
No, I love it.
does my voice get old?
No, it's perfect if you want to do it. I'm trying to take it easy on you. You've been
All
through
right,
a
let's
lot.
do.
You've been going through a lot.
I'm going through a lot right now. All right.
I don't know
So
how much you can
Mark
read in a row.
14, is this 14?
14 bunch of thugs.
43, a bunch of thugs. All right. No sooner were the words out of his mouth when Judas, the one out of the 12, showed up, and with him a bunch of thugs, sent by the high priests, religion scholars, and leaders, brandishing swords and clubs. The betrayer had worked out a signal with them. The one I kiss, that's the one. Seize him. Make sure he doesn't get away. He went straight to Jesus and said, Rabbi, and kissed him. The others then grabbed him and roughed him up. One of the men, standing there, unsheathed his sword, swung, and came down on the chief priest's servant, lopping off the man's ear. Jesus said to them, What is this, coming after me with swords and clubs, as if I were a dangerous criminal? Day after day I've been sitting in the temple teaching, and you never so much as lifted a hand against me. What you in fact have done is to confirm the prophetic writings. All the disciples bailed on him. A young man was following along. All he had on was a bedsheet. Some of the men grabbed him, but he got away running off naked, leaving them holding the sheet. They then led Jesus to the chief priest, where the high priests, religion leaders, and scholars had gathered together. Peter followed at a safe distance until they got to the chief priest's courtyard, where he mingled with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. The high priests, conspiring with the Jewish council, looked high and low for evidence against Jesus by which they could sentence him to death. They found nothing. Plenty of people were willing to bring in false charges, but nothing added up, and they ended up canceling each other out. Then a few of them stood up and lied. We heard him say, I'm going to tear down this temple built by hard labor and in 3 days build another one without lifting a hand. But even they couldn't agree exactly. In the middle of this, the chief priest stood up and asked Jesus, What do you have to say to the accusation? Jesus was silent. He said nothing. The chief priest tried again, this time asking, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed?" Jesus said, "Yes, I am, and you'll see it yourself. The Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Mighty One, arriving on the clouds of heaven." The chief priest lost his temper. Ripping his clothes, he yelled, "Did you hear that? After that, do we need witnesses? You heard the blasphemy. Are you going to stand for it?" They condemned him, one and all. The sentence, death. Some of them started spitting at him. They blindfolded his eyes, then hit him, saying, "Who hit you?" Is it prophesy? Is that what
Prophesy, yeah.
the verb? The guards, punching and slapping, took him away. While all this was going on, Peter was down in the courtyard. One of the chief priest's servant girls came in, seeing Peter warming himself there, looked hard at him and said, "You were with the Nazarene Jesus." He denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about." He went out on the porch, and a rooster crowed. The girl spotted him and began telling people standing around, "He's one of them." He denied it again. After a little while, the bystanders brought it up again. "You've got to be one of them. You've got Galilean written all over you." Now Peter got really nervous and swore, "I never laid eyes on this man you're talking about." Just then the rooster crowed a second time. Peter remembered how Jesus had said, "Before a rooster crows twice, you'll deny me 3 times." He collapsed in tears.
Hmm. What a way to end it.
Mm, it's tough, man.
Peter's not the one you expect. He's not the character that you see collapsing in
No,
tears, you know?
I know. It's tough.
You know what? I use, I use the Bible doesn't have very big margins when I do all this. I know it makes no
I know
sense.
you have notes and stuff. What? What?
Like
What
I have
makes
a
no sense?
Bible that has big, huge margins that I write in every day.
I
But
think
then
it's good.
for this, I use a Bible with almost no margins and write tiny little lines in the.
Oh, that's funny.
But the thing I wrote next to the beginning of this
Hmm.
bunch of thugs thing was FBI raids.
Oh,
Because that's just, I'm picturing these
yep.
J6ers or these like grandmas protested abortions, and the
Yeah.
FBI comes in with guns drawn, pre-dawn raids. And
Right.
and I gotta feel like just taking it out of maybe the spiritual realm for a second,
Yeah.
that Jesus is like, what are you doing? I've been around you all. I've been in the synagogue. I've been in the temple. I've been
Hmm.
all over the place. And now you're going to come at me with like swords and clubs? Like it's
Right.
just crazy.
Yeah. Kind of like just the extreme violent nature of the approach. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Like,
And you know what it is? And I
mm,
thought about this. It's the same in a way.
hmm.
It's the reason that they did that to the J6ers, these people who walked through velvet ropes and did nothing. The reason they do that to these people praying outside abortion clinics is because for whatever reason, and
Hmm.
you can talk about the different reasons, the system is so threatened by them. And
Ah.
that's why and so we look at it and we think, what are they doing? Because we don't
Hmm.
understand the threat they pose to the system. I think that's what we're seeing right here is we don't understand for whatever reason. Nothing about any of this scene really makes a lot of sense. Like it's not
Hmm.
normal. It
Hmm.
wouldn't be normal for Jewish society. They didn't have trials in the middle of the night. Like all of this was
Right.
against Jewish law. Like you
Yeah.
don't do what they did. I'm not even sure. I don't think there's any precedent in Jewish law for somebody being sentenced to death because they happen to claim they were the Messiah. There was all kinds of people who had claimed they were the Messiah over the years.
Really?
There's
At that
tons of false
at that
messiahs.
time? Really?
Yeah, and before.
So the
It like
actual threat, the because his threat is so legitimate, like I think they sense the legitimacy of it. I mean, they look at what they've seen him do.
well,
Maybe that's
yeah.
why they feel so threatened.
Well,
And
I think that's what it is.
maybe that's why they're also making such a big show of it because maybe they're afraid of what kind of power does he have? If we come in, puffing up our chests and wielding
Right.
swords, maybe,
Well, they wanted to kill him. They've been wanting to kill him for a
yeah,
long time.
a couple years, right?
That's how threatened these
Mm,
religious leaders were
Wow.
And we got to, I mean, it's mostly religious. It's not, he never, we talked in the beginning about how he didn't really get into politics a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And any time he had, like, he had Simon the Zealot, that was one of his disciples, but there's no sign of any of that kind of zealotry that was one of the religious or one of the political parties at the time that was all
Mm-hmm.
pro-insurrection, everything. There's no really sign of that anywhere in Jesus' ministry at all.
Right.
He just doesn't, and any time, isn't there's something where it says the people wanted to make him king and he got he kind of slipped through and whatever. So he just stayed far away from all of that. He never comments on Rome, which was, I mean, that was huge in the day because
Mm-hmm.
the Israel was occupied by Rome. It was
Okay.
considered kind of the Roman oppressor, They
All
come in
right.
with their taxes and everything.
Yeah.
And but the way they respond, you're just like, my Lord, like even that's why I'm saying, even if you take it and you just kind of look at it from a story standpoint, it's so over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because people in authority like that, and you could say the same thing about our government when it was dealing with these other things. They know they know they don't have the support of people, and they know they're on really, really flimsy ground. And
Right.
for whatever reason, Jesus embodied so much reality, maybe that's the way to say it. I mean, he's the
Okay.
ultimate reality, right?
Well,
But
yeah, it's the ultimate truth.
and truth and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden this entire system that these religious leaders have built, they see that they may not have known how flimsy it was. They may not have understood the house of cards they were standing on.
Mm-hmm.
But once Jesus comes, it's impossible to ignore because the reality and the truth is right there, and the contrast is so strong.
Right.
And Jesus, though, has the strongest words. He can't stand the religious leaders.
I know, I was going to say, and now I can't think of, I'm sure you would be able to, but I can't think of any specific examples, but we've read about examples throughout Mark, where he speaks to the people and is teaching them, and it's nothing like what the
No,
system has been teaching.
the people are all amazed. They're like, we've never heard anything like this. And I mean, of course, why
And
wouldn't
all the
you? We think
scholars
the
are like,
same
"Oh
thing.
my
Like
God."
Jesus comes, he's
Hmm.
God. Of course, we've never heard anything like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but it's funny that that threat that represents to the system is just
Hmm.
it's what's so astounding to me in the kind of force that they bring in the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
You know, oh,
go
sorry. I
ahead.
don't want to
No,
interrupt you, but
no,
I
go.
feel it's funny because I see you smiling. I'm like smiling about this, and even though we're on the precipice of something really awful, but I feel like just talking about how Jesus really went against all of these systems. We're smiling because I feel like we both have a rebellious side to us. And I'm
It's
thinking to
nice to
myself,
know that God does too.
I know it's kind of funny. Like I've not really thought about that, but it's like Jesus was really part of a
Oh
rebellion.
yeah,
And I've never really
absolutely.
thought of it in those terms, or at least I don't remember us talking that way, but it's just kind of amusing to think of it that way.
And he would go right into the synagogues and sit right there and
Yep.
talk crap about it.
Well,
Just
and it
like
was
call
peace.
them
It was
out.
too. It's peaceful too. It's peaceful. It was just based. It was just
I think he was just
based in love and truth. And
I think Jesus was just genuinely kind of just angered, kind of pissed off at
you think so?
this at what he felt like was a mockery of what was supposed to be worship to him and his father. You know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
think like we set all this up and you've turned it into this and you're oppressing the very people that we
Mm-hmm.
created with it. And I just think he was angry. Well, we know he was. I mean, now the most obvious times when he's driving people out with a whip out of the temple, but I think a lot of
Right.
the time he was angry at what had become of religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
But he wasn't like. But he didn't go. He didn't express it in a violent way. Like I'm
No,
calling it a
no.
rebellion. It was actually a really beautiful. Just lead by example. Appeal to the people. it was an extremely peaceful rebellion, but it
Yeah.
was so powerful, the
Well,
following that
you
he
could
had.
tell
And
how much they wanted to get rid of him because
I
they knew,
know. Yeah, their reaction is a good indicator too.
well, it's crazy. And then, they go through, of course, Judas betrays him with a kiss.
Oh,
And then
poor Judas. I
his
feel so bad for
feel bad for
Judas.
Judas. Not a lot
I
of people say that,
do.
I don't feel like.
I know. I mean, it's so awful, and I just think he just, I
It's
don't
an
know.
interesting thing to think about Judas because he must have been, maybe we talked about this in a previous one, but he must have been devout and a true believer to some extent, at least at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder what turned him against it. If he just came to really believe that Jesus wasn't who he said he was,
Yeah, that's a good question.
because
And was it just the money? Did he
well,
just get enough?
remember what really kind of it looks like set Judas off is when Mary crushed that big bottle of perfume that was worth all the money and anointed Jesus' feet with it, and and Judas was one of the ones saying this could have been sold and the money given to the poor. Remember, and that was
I actually
really what
I
set
don't
it
remember that
off.
it was him. Was it him?
Yeah, he was the one. I
Okay.
don't know if it says it in Mark, but it does say in Mark that it was at that point that Judas started looking for a way to betray him or considering it or something.
Okay.
And it seems like
Oh, so
and it
maybe
also talks about how he was stealing money out of the he was the treasurer for the disciples
right.
and he was
Yep.
stealing money out of the purse.
Okay. So
So
yeah, so he had some issues with money.
was some of it, yeah, clearly he was given over to money to some extent. But don't you feel like he still, in order to become a disciple, like, I mean, he must have at some point loved Jesus, right?
Yeah. Oh, I would think. I would think so because after it he's remorseful. I don't know if it
Well,
shows
he
it
went
in
and hung
Mark's
himself.
account. Right. I don't know if Mark
I don't know if
tells
Mark
that part
does
of the
either.
story, but we've seen it in the other gospels that yeah, he's so remorseful. He feels terrible and I feel like it's like instant. I mean, how could you not? How could you
Yeah.
not feel like the lowest of the low and Jesus turns to you and he's like, "Really? Like you betraying me with a kiss?" And it's so awful.
Well, it's interesting that in Judas it turns to suicidal despair,
Mm-hmm.
whatever remorse or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And in Peter it didn't, because we got at the end of this pass at
Mm-hmm.
the end of what we read, we've got Peter denying Jesus, which Jesus told him that he would.
Yep.
Couple, I don't know if it was in this chapter or whatever, but he was like, "You're before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me, or before
Right.
the rooster crows twice, you're going to deny me three times." And
Yeah.
it's in the midst of Peter. I think it's in the midst of Peter saying, "Yeah." He says, Peter blurted out, "Even if everyone else is ashamed of you when things fall to pieces, I won't be."
Yeah.
And Jesus said, "Don't be so sure. Today, this very night, in fact, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me three times." And Peter blustered in protest, "Even if I have to die with you, I'll never deny you." And all the rest of them said the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then here it says at the end, after Jesus says, "What is this?" And he's coming at me with the clubs like I'm just a dangerous criminal. Day after day, I've been sitting in the temple teaching, and you've never so much as lifted a hand against me. What you, in fact, have done is confirm the prophetic writings. And then the next line is, all the disciples bailed on him. Like, gosh, like I mean, you just imagine, like, oh, imagine Jesus, like everything you're going through anyway, and then all these people that you've poured the most into bail on you. And I know we always think, or I think maybe the temptation is to always feel like, well, Jesus was God, he knew what was coming anyway. And I just don't think that that's a fair way to look at it. I
Yeah,
think he experienced it
even if he knew, it must have been really hard.
because you're not just betrayed by Judas, you're betrayed by everybody just bailing on you.
And these are like his brothers, they're with each other day and night. They've been traveling and ministering for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. I don't know. I don't think Peter's despair is as deep as Judas's because Judas's betrayal, it like directly leads to the arrest, the condemnation and
Right.
death. So, I mean, Peter probably just feels like a jerk. Like he told me and he knew, and
Well, it
I
says
said I would be.
Peter followed at a safe distance until they got to the chief priest's courtyard. So Peter bailed, but he was still following it at a safe distance, which, to be fair, that's how a lot of us follow Jesus. We like to follow at a safe distance. We
Yeah,
don't want
really.
things to get too real.
Hey, everyone out there, we don't like to preach, but we should all be careful not to judge Peter.
I mean, who doesn't at times follow want to, or at least fight the temptation
Hmm.
to follow at a safe distance?
Yeah.
Because that's what we want. We like the idea of a
Hmm.
God, but we really want a safe God. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. We want a God that doesn't disrupt our whole lives,
And if you
stays
remember
stays
in
in
the
his
Chronicles of
box.
Narnia, C.S. Lewis has,
Yeah.
um, I think it's Beaver, Mr. Beaver, talking to Lucy, maybe,
Hmm.
and Lucy, they're talking about Aslan. He's talking about Aslan, the lion,
Okay.
and she says, "But is he safe?" And Mr. Beaver says, "Safe? Whoever said anything about safe? He's definitely not safe, but he's good." And it's such a
Interesting.
great. But what we want's a safe God, but that's not what God offers.
Yeah.
So to take him on his terms is to not feel safe a lot of the time.
Hmm.
But Peter followed that safe distance and then he denies.
Hmm.
And, in Luke, Jesus, in addition to telling him that he's going to deny him in the
Yeah.
upper room, Jesus says, "But when you come back, take care of my sheep," or whatever it is. Take care of your brothers, whatever it is.
Hmm.
So in Luke, there's this idea of Jesus already knows that Peter's not only going to deny him, but that he's going to come back. This isn't going to be the end of Peter's
Okay.
faith. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And you wonder if Peter maybe at some point held on to that too, which was he knew
Sure.
not only did he say I was going to deny him, but he said I was going to come back. Like I think what causes him to deny him probably just his fear, don't you think?
I would think fear. Also, I was going to ask, do we know what the consequences would have been had he fessed up to being a follower of Jesus? Would he be arrested as well?
No, we don't know. I don't know. I
Mm,
mean, they didn't go after any of his disciples, and they were all there
okay. I mean, they all kind
when he
of,
was arrested. You know what I mean?
right. They all, yeah. Oh, yeah. You mean when they came to
Yeah,
arrest?
and I
Yeah.
think I think
They
church
didn't care about
history,
the
and
other
maybe in
ones.
a different gospel, I can't remember, but Peter's the one who swung the sword and took the servant's ear off.
Yeah, I thought so. And I'm sorry, isn't in one of the Gospels, doesn't Jesus heal the man's ear?
Yeah, he does.
Okay, thank you. I read
Yeah,
this
and
and
it
I was
doesn't say
like,
that in here either, but it was Peter who swings the
yeah,
sword.
he's mad
Yeah,
trying
and
to defend him.
and then Jesus says, "Peter, put your sword away," and he heals the guy's ear. I don't know if it's in John. I'm not sure where it is. I'm such a great host. I
No,
have no
I
idea.
mean, hey, it's fine. We're in Mark. We're just letting y'all know
I
that
didn't
there
go to
might
seminary.
there are they wouldn't let you into seminary, Todd.
That is 100% true. They probably won't let Beers with Jesus into the seminary. They'll be
True. You know
blocking it
what?
on
I'm
the,
glad you're
the
not
local
because
networks.
you'd be preaching for 30 minutes on
I
some stage instead of doing this. And I
ain't going to
think
be
that
doing
this is
that.
good. So okay, so I'm glad I didn't imagine that. So that's interesting. Peter, yeah, he's mad.
It's interesting because he does initially defend him and then he bails and then he denies him. Like it's a big arc for Peter.
Hmm.
And then from
But
here,
I think really realistic.
a month and a half later,
Hmm.
after the resurrection, 40 days after, I think, is how long Jesus is bouncing around in his risen, glorified body on earth for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
He's
I didn't
teaching
know it was
people
that
and he's
long.
meeting with them and he's eating with them and he's doing all kinds of things.
For 40 days?
Yeah, that's why they say he was seen by like 500 different people. I mean, it wasn't like only 12 people saw him and made up this story. He was seen by all kinds of
I
people.
did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but after that,
Hmm.
because Jesus in Acts one, it's his ascension. So they're all gathered up on the hill,
Yeah.
and Jesus ascends into heaven, and he says, "But the Holy Spirit will come." And then it's right after that you get the day of Pentecost, and they're all in the upper room, and then the Holy Spirit falls on them, or they're in the temple maybe, and the Holy Spirit falls on them, and they start speaking in tongues and all these things, and
Yeah.
all these people, and then Peter gets up and preaches that first kind of famous post Jesus sermon,
Okay.
and 2,000 or 3,000 people come to Jesus that day, and
Okay.
so my point is, it's quite an arc for Peter. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because he is fighting for Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
but then follows at a safe distance and then gives in and denies, and then does come back, and then Jesus sets him up. And it is interesting. I don't think we're going to see it in Mark. I'm almost positive we won't. So we maybe can bring it up now. But the when Jesus is risen, and he
Mm-hmm.
makes one of his appearances to the disciples. They're out on the Sea of Galilee, and they've been fishing all night. They haven't caught anything. Sounds like a familiar story, right? And then
Right.
somebody calls to them from the shore, and they're like, "Hey, throw your nets on the other side."
Yeah.
And they throw their nets on the other side, and all of a sudden get this amazing, like so many fish they can't even pull them in. And
Right.
in that instant, John's like, "That's the master," and Peter dives off the boat and swims to shore.
He's
and
like, if I can't walk, I'm gonna swim there.
and and they get there, and
Yeah.
Jesus, that's where we talked about Jesus eating, and he's making breakfast. And but Jesus 3 times asked Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I love you." And then he asked him again, "Peter, do you love me?" And then the third time, Peter's getting kind of frustrated. He's like, "Of course, you know that I love blah, blah." And he's like, "Feed my sheep." That's what he said every time. And what you have is kind of this: Peter denied him 3 times,
Yeah.
and then Jesus questions him or speaks to him 3 separate times, and it's like that balance, and he's like, you know what I mean, and now he's
It's
ready to
almost like
go.
him giving him three opportunities to redeem the denials.
Kinda, yeah.
Oh, I've never connected that. That's cool. We are getting ahead of ourselves, but that's really
Well,
interesting.
we're not going to hit it in Mark,
I
so
know. So, quick question. You throughout Mark have said, isn't Peter probably the source of the stories in Mark
yes.
that Mark
Yeah,
wrote?
he is.
Why do you think he didn't include that he was the one who lopped off this guy's
I don't
ear?
know.
It's interesting.
Of all the, I will say this, that of all the gospels, Mark is the hardest on Peter, which maybe that makes sense that it's Peter's transcribed words. And there's really good
Oh,
stories, like where
yeah.
Peter jumps off the boat and walks on the water. I don't think that's in Mark.
Okay, so he maybe he didn't want to glorify
I
himself
don't
in
know.
any
There was
way.
something about it where he left those parts out about
Okay.
himself.
All right.
And
You could see Mark saying, "Hey, you want me to write
and
about that?" And he'd be like, "Nope,
Mark, I
nope, nope."
think was the first gospel written.
Okay.
So Matthew, they think, is basically an extension of Mark. That both Matthew, Mark, and John, or Matthew, Luke, and John, all had the Gospel of Mark as a reference,
Okay.
and
Okay.
so they used some of the stuff, but Matthew kind of took it verbatim and expanded on it, and then John's is kind of totally different anyway. But it's interesting that Peter doesn't include some of that stuff.
Hmm.
Some of the good stuff, you think. Some of the ways that Peter sometimes looks the best are not included in
Right.
Mark.
That's so interesting, but I wonder if that's what it was. He didn't want to glorify himself in any way. Maybe he felt some guilt about how he handled some things, so he just didn't want to show anything
Well, and he
good.
doesn't. I mean, that
He's
even
pretty humble.
brings
Maybe he's just being humble.
it even brings more weight to that final line in the chapter where it says he collapsed in tears, because these are if this is Peter's words,
Yeah.
like, you can just almost imagine like what this does when he realizes it,
Right.
and just but to come back from it. See, I think that's to me, and that if anything, maybe Peter doesn't do the greatest job in showing his own comeback, but I feel like that's a really important part. Like, there's redemption on the other side of that
Right.
failure, and maybe that failure is all tied up in the redemption, and it's all tied up, and it's part of why you're so effective as a rock to found the church on,
Hmm.
because you have failed. And when people come to you and tell you that they failed, you're not going to be on your high horse. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
It's kind of like Aaron back in the Old Testament. You had Moses and Aaron. Aaron was
Hmm.
the brother of Moses, and Aaron was God's first high priest. So he was the first of the
Okay.
priestly order. Well, Moses, when he's up on the mountain getting the Ten Commandments, he's gone 40 days. The people are getting restless. You know, they have been
Hmm.
through the Red Sea and all this and whatever, and they've seen God, the plagues, and they've seen God deliver, but you know, they still are out in the desert and they're still missing Egypt. And they get Aaron to make them this god. Remember, he makes the
Is he the
golden
one who makes
calf.
it? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know
Aaron
that.
makes it.
Bruh.
But and then Moses comes down the mountain
Terrible.
and he just is breaks the Ten Commandments and can't believe and so my point in that is that it's the same kind of dynamic where God makes Aaron the high priest who's had
Hmm.
this massive failure on the front end,
Yeah.
but the people, you never have to worry about Aaron being overly judgmental of the people who are coming to him to have the sacrifices
Ah,
made for their sin. And I wonder if
okay.
it's the same kind of thing with Peter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you need that. Maybe some leaders in at some times almost need those big failures because of the humility that they
Hmm.
get on the back end, or of maybe the ability to kind of relate to people and to
Sure.
not get all bound up in pride. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, definitely makes sense. And I think we would all relate to someone more easily if they had been through some trials and some failures themselves, obviously.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Sorry.
Sorry, I went on for a while.
No, that's cool.
Sometimes
It's
I do that.
interesting.
I just go on and
That's
on
it's interesting. I like it.
and on.
So, anyway, so
What do you think? Anything? What do you think of all that you read? Did we miss anything?
let me look here. I just think, well, we didn't really talk about, we don't have to at length because it's really frustrating, but it's just frustrating listening to the chief priests and the people looking for witnesses, trying to find something to condemn Jesus over.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm sorry, it kind of makes me laugh, like him like tearing his clothes. Did you hear the blasphemy? It's like so,
So much drama.
yeah, but it's kind of like, it's what's the word? It's almost like that virtue signaling
Oh
that we
yeah.
talk about, like this is blasphemous. I'm so I'm so hurt by
He's
what
so
he
much better
said.
than everyone
Yeah,
else.
I'm so hurt by what he said that I have to tear my clothes and
It's the
make a
exact
scene.
opposite of what we were just talking about with Peter
I
and Aaron.
know. I know. So it kind of makes me, it's again sad, but it makes me laugh that causing such a scene.
Oh God. You know what I
Um,
wrote in the margin?
right.
I wrote our
Yeah.
world reality without Jesus. And
Mm-hmm.
what I was talking about was that they're trying to conspire with these witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And plenty of people are willing to bring false charges, but nothing added up. And they ended up canceling each other out. Then a
Yeah.
few of them stood up and lied. We heard him say, I'm going to tear down the temple, build it by hard labor, and in 3 days build another without lifting a hand. But even then they couldn't agree exactly. Like it's like our the cacophony of our world as it tries to, because you've got the truth,
Mm-hmm.
you've got God, you've got the Bible, you've got Jesus. And then in the rest of the world, as they try to get away from it, as they
Yes.
try to find reasons not to believe, there's nothing terribly coherent. They kind of cancel each other out, and you got
Mm-hmm.
this argument over
Yeah,
here,
that's
and this
true.
argument over here, and they don't make a lot of sense, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't ever quite put it together. You know what I mean?
Right.
That ultimate argument because they know that they don't have to declare themselves a creature or a servant of any god.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be subject to a god, and so there's all these different theories and all these different things, but it's just confusion. And it doesn't matter how badly they want it, how badly they want everybody to get on the same page, they can't.
Right, because they're not the truth.
They're
And
wandering from the truth. Yeah.
Jesus says, I am the truth. So, yeah, that's wild. Yeah, that's cool. It is how it is now.
It certainly is a
They're
struggle,
all over the
right?
place. Yep.
You see it too. You see
Uh,
the world just kind of wandering. It is weird to me at the end,
mm-hmm.
before Peter's denial. I mean, there's nothing in any of it that makes sense, even from like just a regular earthly political thing of why. why they would
Hmm.
condemn him to death. I mean, none of it, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And besides the fact that the Jews couldn't, they had to have Rome actually condemn someone to death. They couldn't.
Hmm.
Rome had put a
Okay.
stop to that. It's not like the
Okay.
Jews could just go stone him. Like the Romans wouldn't let them. They didn't let them just carry out Mostly they let their provinces kind of rule themselves, but there were certain
Okay.
things you had to pay them, obviously, and there were certain things you couldn't do. And
Oh,
one of them was capital punishment. You can't just start
they
killing
weren't allowed
people.
to do that.
No.
Okay.
That's why he ends up going to Pilate and the whole thing. Or he goes to Herod first and goes up to Pilate. They got to kind of go up the political ranks.
Okay.
And it was only Rome who could give that order. So, but what's strange, what I guess struck me as just weird, and I can't quite wrap my head around why, is it says some of them, so they condemn them to death, and then they
Hmm.
basically, the religious leaders and the priests kind of retire, and the soldiers kind of take over Jesus. And it says some of them started spitting at him. They blindfolded his eyes, then hit him, saying, "Who hit you? Prophesy." The guards punching and slapping took him away. It's the abuse that is just, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like
Right. Like
it's
where'd that come from? Where did the
why
vitriol?
what do these soldiers have against Jesus?
Right.
I
Is
mean,
it just, I don't know, is it just a power trip? Are they just having a power trip?
I
I
don't
mean, and
know.
I didn't understand it when I read it, but afterwards it made sense to me about the like them saying who hit you, prophesy.
Well,
It's
yeah,
like, oh,
they're trying to
they're
mock
mocking.
him,
Yeah, they're mocking him. I get it. I didn't understand it when I read it.
but I
Sorry.
don't really know why. I mean,
Hmm.
what are these? What is every place Jesus went, people thronged to him, or
Yeah.
thronged. Wasn't that one of the words? They flocked to him,
Yeah. No, I think it was, yeah, I got it.
and they uh they came from all over, and he healed people, and there just isn't any. I mean, there's nothing about Jesus like that would have. If anything, he had
Right.
like centurions and stuff. Remember, he healed the one guy's daughter. He
Oh,
seemed to have
right.
some measure of respect from
Hmm.
people, soldiers and whatever. And I don't really understand
Right.
what they're so, unless they've completely bought into, the whole priest, the chief priest and the Pharisees and everything. They bought that line. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Or
Yeah, I
maybe
wonder
somehow they've
their
convinced them.
guards.
I don't know. I just think it's weird. Well, either that or they're just flat out kind of masochist, and
I was
maybe
gonna say, yeah, they just a particular bad batch of guys.
and maybe that kind of career or profession tends to attract those kind. I don't
Right,
know.
like, imagine that they're like kind of like prison guards.
Yeah,
Maybe they just got off on being abusive, I
I
guess, but
guess.
it does seem so uncalled for the way that, Jesus's demeanor during all this. It's like you don't
Well,
need
the
to be
whole
that way.
thing, it just takes this big
Yeah.
turn where like Jesus is just Jesus, wandering around
Right.
healing people and doing whatever.
Yeah,
And
like
then
what's your
next thing you know,
problem?
they're attacking them with a bunch of thugs and they got all these
Hmm.
swords and clubs and then they're beating them up. And it's just like, what is going on?
Hmm.
And it's not even, I can see from the story, I understand God bringing this whole story and it was prophesied and the whole thing.
Right.
But what I have a hard time with is like the people themselves, the guys themselves that are actually doing this. Like, what are you getting? I don't understand.
Hmm.
Or, I mean, I really don't. Or is it just that they are so? Or are they just a bad group of guys? And
Maybe.
whatever the truth and the light is in Jesus just makes them hate him even more. I
Could
don't
be
know.
kind of like how there are people today who are so like passionately anti-Jesus that they almost are crazed, like if
Yeah,
they are faced with any sort of faith-based group, like they just get so violent and ugly
I
that you're kind of like,
guess.
wow, why don't you just like walk on by? Like, what is your problem? Kind of almost lights up this violent reaction in them, you know?
I guess.
I hate to think about it. Whenever I see those videos of people who are just really lashing out violently, that it almost seems like it's not even human.
Yeah.
It freaks me out. But that's kind of what that reminds me of a
I don't
little
know.
bit.
It's just, yeah, I can't relate to like,
Hmm.
you've already seen this guy. They already, what, sentenced him to death.
Right.
And now you're
Yeah.
getting off on the fact that you can. beat him up when he's blindfolded and like in
Oh,
handcuffs or whatever. Not handcuffs, but
wait,
you know what I mean?
Todd, maybe that's it. Maybe it's the fact that he's been sentenced to death. He's basically a
Mm-hmm.
death row guy. Maybe that's kind of a line
I
that,
know, but wouldn't you think
oh,
like
well, no. I agree with you. All the stuff that we said still
remember the
applies,
movie The
but
Green Mile?
yes.
Like that was death row.
Right.
And they weren't
Yeah.
just beating the shit out of people for
No, but
fun.
that
They
was a
actually had some
very,
respect for him, you know?
yes, that was a very
But I mean, you could be
special
right.
group of
Maybe that's what it
guys.
was. Maybe that people just, if somebody's sentenced to death, they think they're garbage and they treat them like that. I
Right.
don't know.
Well, just like Percy in the Green Mile, he felt
Oh, Percy. Yeah, yeah,
Percy,
yeah. Took me a
yeah,
second.
he's the one who, yeah, who just treated them all like garbage and had to kind of keep being put back in check by
Was
the
it
guys.
Percy?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
But
you're,
he's the one who really like ridiculed them, felt
yeah.
superior to them because they were condemned to death. And so maybe these guys are like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's what the line was for them. That
I
kind
just
of
like to think, my God, you
gave
got
them
a group of
permission.
guards. Don't you hope that a couple of them are like, God, why are you guys being such assholes? I mean, I
One would
know
hope. I know. You'd
it's just that
hope.
I get that it was prophesied and this was how it was going to go. And it's,
You
it's
think
like the worst
Jesus?
possible thing happening to the best possible person. I understand all of that.
Yeah.
But man, when I get down into the nuts of it and I try to think of the actual people themselves, I'm just like, like what?
Wow. Well, do you
The
think
the
Jesus
priests
was
I can
under the?
understand because I get like this threat that they feel to their
Yeah.
entire everything. They're like
Hmm.
the deep state right now. They're threatened.
Yeah.
But I don't get like the guards is like weird to me. You know what I mean? Like it's hard for me to imagine them feeling so threatened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not threatened, but I think just empowered because it's a dead man walking.
Do you think that's possible that they felt that Jesus' very presence, whatever it was, they
Uh-huh.
felt guilty? Just for whatever. I'm not saying any. I just mean in general that he just made them feel like, and sometimes the response to feeling guilty is to lean into it even more. I don't know. I
Ah,
really
yeah.
don't know.
Possible. Sure.
Who knows? We're just
It could
into the
be.
weeds here on
Yeah, I
Beers
know.
with
We're
Jesus.
speculating, but it does seem like it does seem like a harshness out of nowhere. And I think it's kind of interesting to speculate a little bit about where that came from. But
It's just shocking to me that I guess that's what's shocking to me is a little bit of a lack of just basic humanity.
right.
You know? I don't
Yeah.
know. But
So I'm wondering, do you think Jesus was under the hood getting beaten like yeah, and looked up to God like, really? These guys? Like
I don't know. That's the
like it's
thing.
bad
Like,
enough. Bad enough, Dad.
yeah, it's just yeah. That's
Terrible.
that part of the scene for whatever reason really bugs me. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? I think it would bug me
Right.
if it's anybody. It's just
Hmm.
man, there's so much injustice. Like and it's all like
Yes.
down to this little point of like three lines. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And it's
No,
just
I
like,
know what you mean.
gosh,
The
assholes.
whole
That's
thing.
what I feel like.
Assholes. We're only at the very tip of the
I
iceberg of the
know.
injustice that is to come.
I
But
know.
yeah.
It's but anyway, I thought
Mhm.
we did pretty good with everything else.
Yeah,
So
it's
I,
good.
I think we did a decent job. You think so, Carrie?
I hope so. I hope people think so.
Yeah, I hope. I hope people enjoyed it.
Me
Got
too.
something out of it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we're gonna call it a day.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week. Be a
Thank you,
little different.
Todd.
I'll be mostly solo with a little call in from Carrie. And then Carrie will be back and she's just gonna be
Maybe.
on vacation. She's getting a
Yep.
little R&R next week.
R&R.
Be fun, right?
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, have fun, Carrie.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining me today. All right, guys, we
Love
will
it.
catch you next week. Thanks for joining us. Listen to the Wildly Opinionated News Hour if you haven't. We drop it the day before this. So,
Yeah, it's a good one.
all right, guys, we'll see you.